And I wanted to share with you a really beautiful story of the first tree that was planted here in November of 1996. My family, like many Vietnamese families, endured a great loss. My brother, my younger brother Daniel, was a helicopter pilot in the war, and he was shot down and died on that day. It was the most incomprehensible news of my life. To imagine that parents raise their children and give them love and education and discipline and training to be wonderful citizens of the community, and suddenly this fast their life is ended. I could not imagine the tragedy for my parents, and suddenly I realized my parents were joining thousands and thousands and thousands of parents in America and in Vietnam. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of families losing their sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. And in that moment, a message came to me that someday, somehow, some way, American families like my family must find a way to reach out to the Vietnamese people in a way that could go under the pain of loss and begin to connect with the Vietnamese people, to honor the losses on all the sides, and begin to build a bridge of trust and understanding. I didn't know how that could happen. I only knew that one day it must happen.
Thank you very much. I welcome you all here, those who have been introduced, and in the audience. Today I am announcing the normalization of diplomatic relationships with Vietnam.
And that day came in 1996, 27 years later, on the day that the United States and Vietnam established diplomatic relations for the first time, July 11, 1995. My husband and I were riding on an airplane, and I saw the headlines in the newspaper, U.S. normalizes with Vietnam, reading the newspaper. And we were both so deeply moved that the day had come. The time had come for us to mobilize our idea. And that was such an extraordinary moment that I knew that in that tiny moment when diplomatic relations are restored, there's a kind of opening that for people to move quickly to build bridges in that moment seemed extremely important. And my late husband and I had been working in a program that he named Peace Trees, building bridges with teenagers around the world who had grown up in conflict zones. And we began speaking immediately about this. How could we take Peace Trees to Vietnam? The evening before we were leaving to fly to Vietnam in November of 1996, it was actually a difficult time. Suddenly, my husband had passed away as we were getting ready to leave for Vietnam. She drove her car over to my home and brought this little box. And she said to me with tears, I was deeply moved. I could not imagine. I could not have imagined such a great, generous gift that she would ask because she felt so deeply. As I was flying across the ocean to Vietnam, I had these very safely with me. And very soon, we were welcomed to Vietnam. We were invited to meet Mr. Vu Xuân Home, who was then the director of the Union of Friendship Organizations in Hanoi. I have imagined that we would be so warmly welcomed by the Vietnamese people. But he said, come in, it's time to close the past and open the future. And then we sat down to have tea together, and he said, you know, we've been waiting for the American people for a very long time. We were deeply moved to learn this. And we shared with Mr. Vu Xuân Home our idea. He invited us to Quảng Trị province, and we took the night train that night. We took the train to Dong Ha, and we arrived in the morning. And when we arrived in Dong Ha, we were welcomed by the Foreign Relations Department and welcomed to the province in the same warm way we were welcomed in Hanoi.
May I invite all of you coming to the sitting room? Please come in. We would like to welcome you to Quảng Trị province and Quảng Trị people.
And that day, that very day, we sat down together and wrote a memorandum of understanding that our organization, we were creating our organization, Peace Trees Vietnam, would sponsor clearance of the land here on this land, 18 acres of land, which we understand was one of the fieriest battlegrounds of the war.
Tôi rất tự hào khi tham gia vào dự án và gia đình Peace Trees Việt Nam. Tôi tên là Nguyễn Thị Lệ Quyên. Năm nay tôi 29 tuổi. Tôi hiện là nhân viên kỹ thuật của đội BAC3. Gia đình tôi ở Dốc Miếu, Giao Phong, Giao Linh, Quảng Trị. Và tôi đã lập gia đình và hiện nay tôi đã có con trai năm nay đã 3 tuổi. Tôi đang sống với cùng bố mẹ chồng. Lúc mới tham gia vào công việc này thì gia đình cũng rất là lo lắng về công việc nguy hiểm như thế này. Trong lúc cũng lo lắng nhưng mà đã được giải thích và giải thích về công việc, giải thích về cái quá trình mà được dự án tập huấn thì chồng cũng không lo lắng và cũng ở nhà cũng giúp đỡ chăm sóc con cái. Và thực ra thì tôi cũng chưa hình dung được công việc của một nhân viên rà phá bom mìn là như thế nào. Nhưng mà tôi biết về bom mìn. Ở nơi tôi sống thì rất là nhiều người bị chết và bị thương với bom mìn. Ngay ở trong gia đình tôi thì một lần đi làm vườn cũng gặp bom mìn. Những lúc như vậy thì tôi cảm thấy rất là sợ. Tôi nghĩ nếu như mình được làm một nhân viên rà phá bom mìn thì sẽ mang đến nhiều an toàn và bình yên hơn cho nơi mình ở. Nên khi nghe dự án PT tuyển người nên tôi đã nộp hồ sơ. Vào được dự án thì tôi được tập huấn rất đầy đủ về các vật liệu nổ và cách làm việc đội và nhóm. Cũng như sự giúp đỡ của các thành viên trong đội và thầy thì tôi đã được học lên IMAX bậc 2.
mưa lũ hay sao? Em đang coi xử lý cái.
Và càng làm thì tôi càng cảm thấy gắn bó với công việc này hơn. Vì những nơi tôi làm việc qua thì các con đường được bê tông hóa và các ngôi trường được xây mới lên, nên tôi cảm thấy rất vui. Nhưng những đứa trẻ vui chơi cười đùa thì tôi cũng cảm thấy là con trai mình cũng được vui vẻ như vậy.
Đội đập phá bom mìn lưu động của chúng tôi tiến hành hủy nổ nhiều loại bom mìn cực kỳ nguy hiểm tại khu vực đồng ruộng này.
Tất cả các vùng gác kiểm tra an toàn báo cáo.
Chuẩn bị huy nổ. 3, 2, 1.
Con trai cũng hỏi là mẹ đi làm công việc gì, thì em cũng nói là mẹ đi làm rà phá bom mìn. Thì những lúc như vậy thì con trai cũng là nói là bom mìn là nổ là mẹ nè, đừng có làm, nổ chết người, cô nói vậy. Em cũng nói với con trai mình rằng là công việc đó là nguy hiểm, nhưng mà mẹ đã được tập huấn đầy đủ và mẹ cũng biết cách làm việc để cho đảm bảo sự an toàn của mình, để làm cho mọi người là để có nơi canh tác, rồi là để cho họ làm công việc trồng trọt để được an toàn hơn. Mà con trai em thì rất chi là tin tưởng và mẹ, vì mẹ công việc của mẹ là làm mà mang tới bình yên và an toàn cho mọi người.
And that we would then, once the land was cleared, we would bring volunteers from many places in the world, importantly, American veterans and their families, and people who lost a family member, and people who had a difficult experience, people from every possible side and voice and country. And we would bring them here on this land to plant the trees, peace trees, to become the living symbol of our working together with the Vietnamese people to begin building truly strong bridges of trust from a very difficult history.
Geraldine and her mother Ray have built an incredible organization, and they turned their grief at the loss of their son and brother into this really powerful, positive force.
Quezon is very important because this combat base was known around the world. Around the world on the television, people learned about the battles at Quezon. And many, many people lost their lives on all sides of the war near Quezon. And so the significance to plant the trees here. My strongest experience here was first during the Operation Lamson 719. But on June 4th of 1971, it was surrounded, and we had to fly in to remove the last people before they were all killed. And we were shot up. The helicopter was shot up, and we had to crash land right here on the runway at Kaesang. And the helicopter was on fire. The controls were not working right. The fuel was leaking. But my friends came and picked us up very quickly, so we were not taken prisoner. But I almost lost my life myself here at Kaesang, so I remember this place. My roommate that I lived with was killed here in Vietnam, but near Kaesang, and many other people. So to me, it's a very sacred place. It's a very important place, and many people of the People's Army were killed near here, all sides. But I think also this place is very beautiful. The mountains here are very beautiful. Now it's very green. It's a lovely museum. So I hope that because we are now friends, that we can create this peace garden also at this place. To this mountain, when I see this mountain, I feel it right now in my back. I want to next year.
We'll mention this idea of a Kaesang garden and a soldier sanctuary where soldiers on any side of any armed conflict can be honored, and soldiers from any side of any armed conflict can reconcile face to face. We thought we would put this idea out gently in this meeting and just suggested that it might be 2 or 3 years later before they would come back and give us some reaction, but we wanted to, part of the intent on this trip, we wanted to suggest that a garden and sanctuary be created there for that purpose.
Doesn't matter on what side they're on. I think it stands for moving on, becoming friends, and letting the past be the past. Turning over a new leaf, and this is the perfect way to do it. Envision myself doing that with somebody, but right now I can't envision it. But hopefully one day, times will change, and we can all move on.
Cái quả khoa được kia thì mình cố gắng là sẽ bỏ qua để mình hướng tới tương lai cho con cả sau này mình bắt tay lại với nhau để mình xây dựng cái tổ quốc và cái thể hòa bình.
And so the significance to plant the trees here is very important because it is the only place in the world that I know of where you have the combat base with a peace garden at the same place as the combat base. So to me, this is the only place in the world where the entire story is put together in one place.
And you may know that later, after Peace Trees was developed and growing, she was deeply moved that this was possible. And I brought her a photograph of the first tree. She was so moved that this gift of love and respect to the Vietnamese people is securely held in the roots of this tree that has grown so tall and strong now. She was deeply moved by it, and she told many people the story. We went back to the United States
and our additional work with developing grants with the Department of State for our demining teams, building more schools, more libraries, and the tradition that has been established, thanks to people like our friend Sue Werner-Bean, of building schools and libraries.
Robert and I visited Vietnam in 2016 with Peace Trees Vietnam, and we visited several kindergartens in remote villages, and we were touched, our hearts were touched by the children and the need that was being fulfilled in small rural villages where there were no schools to teach them Vietnamese. For us, bringing a school in friendship would help to heal some of the wounds of what was a terrible war, which devastated these people in the villages.
And we thought this would be a wonderful way to honor his life, teaching young children and giving young children a better chance to lead a full and productive lives. He did not fight in Quảng Trị province. He fought in the southern part of Vietnam. John Seo was my very best friend. We met when we were in kindergarten, a kindergarten like this kindergarten. And he was a captain in the United States Army, and he died here in Vietnam. For us, the whole country, we wish we could do this everywhere in Vietnam. We chose to do this here in Quảng Trị because Peace Trees Vietnam works here, and we went on the trip with them, and this seemed that there was a need for the school here, and we were delighted to have the opportunity to do this.
That has grown so tall and strong now. In November of 1996, 42 volunteers from 7 countries, many Vietnam veterans, their children, their families, several people who had lost a soldier in the war. It was a very rich experience. Provincial Vice Chair welcomed us here for our first International Peace Trees Vietnam delegation. And as we came in a procession, we were asked to stop here, and then Mr. Hoa, the Provincial Vice Chair, began the ceremonies of welcome.
Thay mặt Ủy ban nhân tỉnh và nhân dân Quảng Trị gửi đến quý vị và tất cả bạn bè lời chào hữu nghị và lời chúc mừng nồng nhiệt.
I was holding in my hand the medals that were presented to my parents after my brother was killed in the war. The Distinguished Flying Cross, the Purple Heart, and several others. My mother had asked me to bring the medals. She presented them to me before I left my home, and honoring all the losses to the Vietnamese people. So the first tree was about to be planted. Mr. Hoa came over with me, and together we lifted them down into the soil, and the tree went down into the hole. she said to me, I want you to take these medals, plant them under the first tree, is to carry my deepest spirit and greatest respect. Later, Peace Trees was developed and growing so tall and strong now. Peace, friendship, and trust.